and we ultimately we kicked ass, man. I think in that 4 year time period, we went from 6 million when I first got there to 26 million. So I mean that's incredible growth. We raised $25 million. I think I ended up raising somewhere around 35 million total capital by the time I left, and that was kind of like for my peers, like and people I went to school with, that was like unheard of. They were like, "What do you mean you've raised almost $30 million? What does that even look like? Like, how do you do that?" And so there was just all these different things that ended up happening because of that, me leaning into it and embracing the pressure. So that was the biggest lesson. And yeah, I'm still embracing the pressure today because even as an entrepreneur, there's different pressures. Pressure doesn't really go away, right? It just changes. So yeah.
So welcome back to another episode of Momentum Matters. This is John Gamatis, and I'm joined today by Exit Momentum founder and head coach Cullen Talley, and our guest for today, Frank Pace. Let me give you a little background on today's episode. So Momentum Matters has always been focused on adding value to anyone who's listening, anyone who's in on these episodes, right? And one of the things that's kept coming up is the stories of entrepreneurs and business owners and founders and the things that they deal with on a daily basis, the lessons they've learned, the challenges they're encountering, the good things and the bad things, right? And we wanted you as a listener to be able to experience those conversations firsthand. The best way we figured out to do this was to just get some people on here and do interviews with founders and owners and leaders who can share firsthand what their experience has been, what they've gone through, kind of what the journey looks like, which leads us here today. So today we're excited to welcome Frank Pace to the conversation. He's got a strong financial background, leadership background. He's the former CFO at Design Pickle, and currently he's the founder of Fiscal, which is a financial CFO firm, a fractional CFO firm that helps entrepreneurs build and scale their businesses. And Frank, we'll be talking about Fiscal a little bit more here. We want to hear that story, learn a little bit more about who you are and what you do. And I'm excited to dig into some of the financial parts of this conversation because I think there's going to be a ton of value in there. So with that, we're just going to jump right in. Start us off with this. Give us a little bit of your background. How'd you get into finance? Like a little bit even about how you grew up. How'd you get here today? And what does that story look like?
Yeah, well, first of all, honored to be here and be a guest on the pod. So thank you so much. My background. So I am from Indianapolis, Indiana, born and raised there. Went to Purdue University and studied accounting. Was approached in high school by this guy who was running a business program for Purdue University, specifically for minority students. It was called the Business Opportunity Program, and had no real expectations about what I wanted to be. Like I played football in high school, and my dream at that time was to walk on to the Purdue football team. It was going to be this huge story because I didn't get a scholarship coming out of high school, and I had a huge chip on my shoulder. And I was like, you know what? I'm going to walk on, and I'm going to be like, all Big Ten, All American linebacker at 5'9", 200 pounds. And yeah, I'm gonna go on to the NFL, and that was my story, right? Like that was like I'm gonna do this. Um, Quickly realized that to play Big Ten football, play linebacker in Big Ten football is a little different than what I was doing in Indianapolis, and was humbled by that. But ultimately, just had some really good people in my life that turned my mindset around and said, you know what, it's not the end all be all for you. You're a smart kid. You have ambition, you have drive. It just needs to be pointed in a different direction. So let's look at this business thing, right? And so, went to the business school there, focused on accounting. That was like the big thing, become a CPA, work at a public accounting firm, and I went down that path, right? I definitely was on the path to become a CPA. I worked at Ernst and Young. I was an intern there for probably 2 or 3 summers. I think it was 3 summers ultimately. Uh, but then decided at the last minute, my senior year, I was like, I don't know if I want to be an auditor for the rest of my life. I don't know if that is my calling, right? And so uh, funny enough, I was approached by a friend who was starting his own business and needed help with his books. And I was going to school for this, and he brought this to me, right? And so he had a moving business in Indianapolis that was doing really, really well. It was called Red Cheetah Moving. And so he brought this to me, and I was like, dude, do you realize how much money you're doing? Like, this business is growing super fast. He was just, running it as like a side hustle, but I mean, the guy was making upwards of 40, 50, $60,000 a month in revenue, right? And at that time, for somebody who was going to class and doing all this accounting crap, I was seeing my friend from high school, making tens of thousands of dollars building a business, right? And so I said, something, this can scale. Like, I can see the model in which this scales from a franchising perspective and all these different things. And that really excited me. And so at the last minute, when I was graduating from Purdue, I decided to decline the offer that EY gave me to start as an auditor and go help this guy build this business, this moving business. And so, needless to say, the parents were not excited about that move. So it was a lot of like back and forth with my parents. But I think a core theme for me in my career has been having a belief in something and sticking to it, and really saying like, you know what, I'm going to, no matter what, I'm going to chase this thing, because if I give it my full effort, something positive is going to come from this experience. And it did. Like, I helped grow that business to about seven figures, a little over $2 to $3 million a year. That eventually just fizzled out. Business relationship fizzled out between me and my friend from high school, and I had to move on. I had to do different things, and so from there we moved to Arizona. I started working in corporate finance for Honeywell, and again, kind of ran into this thing where I was doing great. I was making great money at Honeywell, but I just wasn't fulfilled at the end of the day. And so it was like a life sucking corporate finance job where it was super like it was just like these cadences of FP&A where it's like monthly reporting, forecasting, 4+8, 5+7. Like it was that cadence, and it was super monotonous and boring. And I was like, you know what, I gotta find something else to do. And so I was looking for, okay, let me not go corporate, right? Let me not go at these large conglomerates in finance. Let me find an entrepreneur, a small business, particularly in tech. Let me find somebody that's building something, and let me try to help them build it, right? And I ran across this crazy guy named Russ Perry, who was building this, really weird sounding graphic design company called Design Pickle. And as part of my job interview with Russ, he said, "Hey man, can you just take a look at this?" He showed me this crap ass spreadsheet about how he was going to grow the business, by like, I don't even remember the number. It must have been something outrageous. It was like 400 or 500%. Cullen, you might remember the numbers more than I did
Yeah,
back
I
then.
did.
Um, but and I was just like, you know what? The dude doesn't know anything about forecasting or whatever, but I believe in his vision. Like, I believe in what he's doing, and I love more than anything helping entrepreneurs build practical, realistic financial plans to reach their goals. Right? Like, more than anything, that's what I love to do. And so I did that. I took a jump from Honeywell to Design Pickle. Again, another tough conversation with family and friends, particularly my wife. Like, hey, I'm going to go chase this thing called Design Pickle, and I'm going to help this guy, Russ Perry, build his dream. And, that decision paid off dividends. I mean, we went through pretty much everything you can go through at Design Pickle, right? In terms of the growth story and the entrepreneurial journey. We eventually grew that business to, by the time I left in September of 2023, it was a $26 million a year business. And I just learned so much. Like, I thought I knew everything I could know about, growing a business. But I didn't until I got, like, once I was a CFO and had grown up into the role of a CFO and started doing the board stuff and raising capital, all those different things. That's when I really learned a ton about what it means to run a successful operation at that level. And so from there, the last point, I know I'm being long winded here, but the last point I would say is, it really got to a point where I knew I needed to get back to the core of what I was doing, and Design Pickle had kind of turned into the corporation that I've kind of despised my entire career, really, right? And so I really knew that, Yeah, it's not a bad thing. It's just like it wasn't me, right? It wasn't like who I was at the core. My core values no longer aligned, and it was affecting my work product, right? And so I knew I needed to pivot, and ultimately, Russ was super graceful about it. They brought in somebody who the board had worked with in the past to be my replacement as CFO, and we went our separate ways amicably. And I'm still, me and Russ are still great friends to this day. I'm going to Utah with him on Thursday, right? And so it was one of those moments where I learned what I needed to learn. Russ helped me really grow my career too as well in terms of becoming a CFO. And then it was time to like, what's the next step? And the only thing I could think about was, Frank, what do you do that brings you passion? What gets you out of bed? When you think back on all the moments and like all the time you've invested, what gets you out of bed? Like what's the thing where you don't have to set an alarm and you just know like I'm getting after it today. And it was really just helping entrepreneurs grow their dreams into something and grow their dreams into the vision ultimately that they want to achieve, right? And so I ran across this crazy concept of being a fractional CFO, ran into a group of my peers who have started their own fractional firms. And I was like, oh, you guys are doing exactly, I found my people, I found my tribe. You guys are doing exactly what I'm passionate about, right? And so decided to start Fiscal back in March of 2024, and I've been grinding on it ever since, basically helping tech-enabled service businesses that are stuck at that seven-figure mark scale to eight figures and beyond, and ultimately achieve the exit of their dreams. So that is Fiscal in a nutshell. That is my story, and I'm sticking to it.
Man, I love that. 100 different ways we could go with this, but one question pops up for me right away. Like when you're thinking through Red Cheetah and you're thinking through Design Pickle, uh, something that streams through both of those, and you kind of hit on this, is there was an opportunity to mix finance with vision. Like you came in with a financial lens, but you also through that lens you were able to have a vision for where this could go. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, the goal of these visionaries is usually the same. They want to scale and grow, and the actual role of the finance lead or somebody that's coming in is to make it plain for them, make it clear as day to say these are our options to get there, right? It's not about like one plan. It's like what are all the different paths we can get there? What's the most optimal based on what I know and my experience? And now let's come together and figure out what we want to do. So it's true partnership is what I would say. I don't think you can have a great company without having both, right? I think it's very difficult for somebody to be sitting in a seat and being a visionary and also be the one that's developing the financial roadmap to get there. It's just very hard to do, which is, one of the things that I've always tried to impart on my prospects or clients that work with me is look, beyond the value that you get of paying for a CFO at a fraction of the cost, you're getting a partner that can hold you accountable to your own vision, right? And that's really why you should be investing in finance ultimately.
Absolutely. Cullen, I'm gonna hand this off to you because I know that finance and the work that you do and finance and how it ties to vision is something you're pretty passionate about. And finance is an area where you see gaps in businesses all the time. Can you talk about that a little bit?
Yeah, I mean, you can hear it here, right? You can hear the difference in the way that Frank talks about the interaction inside the business than what most people normally experience. Most people experience the finance seat as this kind of information reporting, backward looking point of view for the business, and there's not really this true connection and partnership to how those things work. And so for me, what you're seeing is what it should look like. And part of the reason that we have so much respect for Frank and why we refer clients to him is because we know they're getting a partner in the finance seat that allows them to actually go and look at the reality of what they want to do. It's easy to write down a vision and a strategic plan on a document and go through an exercise on a whiteboard over several days and get fired up. It is hard to then map that to actual resources of cash and how we're going to manage those things and how we're going to make the hires and everything else, because the reality is growth is expensive. It's expensive to grow. And so if you don't understand that, when people are like, oh, well, growth has become the problem. As you know, John, many of the things that we solve is this growth problem that people have. Like, wait, growth's the problem? I'm like, yes, growth is the problem because it sucks cash into the business at this enormous rate. And if you're not clear about that, and all of a sudden it becomes the Bank of Cullen or the Bank of John or the Bank of Frank trying to
Mm-hmm.
manage that, it becomes very, very difficult to think through. And so you need to have enough foresight to see that, because you're going to make different decisions about your sales process, your upfront fees, your AR. You're going to make decisions on financial things related to that. And that's where Frank is a master. And that's why I wanted to have him on today, because he just thinks through the mechanics of that and can see, we can see down the road as entrepreneurs and as leaders and stuff like that in terms of maybe some macro trends or some product category or whatever else. We're not so good at seeing down the road in terms of the financial implications of that, and when, not only what we're going to need, but when we're going to need it in terms of financial resources, because it hasn't been laid out that way. And so
Mm-hmm.
that to me is why this is so important. And there's a lot of very good, well-intentioned people in many, many finance seats that simply don't have these skills. And most entrepreneurs don't have time to let them catch up, because this is, you listen to Frank's background, this is years of work, right? This is decade plus of investment to get to this place where he's that level of a professional. You're not going to send somebody to some QuickBooks course and figure this out in 90 days. That's not
No,
how this works, right?
no,
And the other
no.
thing is, he's taken large company concepts where he was and was bored to death. That said, he built some skills and some ability in that time to then take that kind of thinking down. So when you think about what's required of publicly traded companies and large organizations as far as forecasting, which they have to do from a compliance standpoint, now you're getting that skill in a much smaller company, which quite frankly, none of the clients, that are in that place typically have that. Last thing I'll say about this is, every fraction, this is not about promoting Frank, even though we love and appreciate Frank. Every fractional CFO firm is not a fractional CFO firm. That is a label that gets used way too much. I
Mm-hmm.
feel as passionate about that as I do about how many poor business coaches there are out there, because there are people that are calling themselves that, and they're really good at bookkeeping. They're really good at some controller level stuff, but they're not doing what we're talking about here. And I think this is important. So if you're listening and watching this, and you're considering this, you really need to make sure you're understanding what are the sets of services they do. Because when somebody says they do it all, that just tells me they suck at some things and aren't very good at others.
Correct.
So I'm gonna ping pong this back to you, Frank, because I want to play off of what Cullen just talked about. There are organizations out there, and I'm sure you run into them all the time, that either don't have somebody in this role today,
Mhm.
or they have somebody in the role who's claiming to be a CFO or a financial leader who is not equipped to actually do the job. But what's the danger in that for businesses? What do you see when you're talking to clients and prospects?
I mean, there's lost opportunities. There's the cost of making the wrong financial decisions in general. I think about hiring, right? Like hiring is such a big one that I've seen in the past, where it's like, we're just gonna go out there and we're gonna hire a bunch of folks in the sales side of the business, because if we hire a bunch of SDRs, if we hire a bunch of AEs, that's what's going to really drive growth for our business. And what ultimately happens in those situations, especially when you don't understand your numbers or understand just go to market efficiency in general, is you spend a bunch of money and a bunch of time hiring people that ultimately don't hit their numbers, that you have to end up firing. So you've not only had to you grow it, and the only reason why I can speak to this is because we've made this mistake. I've seen this happen before, made this mistake, right? And people just do this because that's just they don't lean on the numbers, they don't lean on the data, right? And they just ultimately throw something at the wall to see what sticks, right? And I think that is the real danger when it comes to not investing and having somebody that's truly financial be there for you to say, actually, the way we should be looking at this is from this perspective. This is what our go-to-market efficiency looks like, and maybe we should be shifting our spend into the more efficient channels for acquisition. I'm just spitballing and thinking about things at a high level because I don't want to get too in the weeds about it. But it just, to me, it's lost opportunity, it's bad decision making. All of those things cost, and they have downstream effects, right? Like it's not just the money you wasted hiring these people. Like it's the culture that gets affected when you hire people at the wrong time, and then you have to lay people off. Like as a business owner, like that has a negative impact on your culture, right? People then don't feel safe at work. They feel like the leadership team doesn't know what they're doing, right? They have no idea how to run the business, and then now you're losing productivity at all levels of the organization, not just in that department that you laid off, right? So there's a lot at stake. I would say that, outside of not hitting your not hitting your milestones and your goals, you know, a lot of people who start businesses are personally attached to the success of their business. And so one of the things I always am talking about with prospects in the qualification process is, well, what does this mean for you? Like not the business goals, like the business goals I get, right? But what does reaching, 100K in monthly recurring revenue mean to you, the business owner, right? Does that mean you can increase your salary so you can spend more time with your kids? Does that mean you're, able to take a couple more vacations and spend more time with your family? Like, are you healthier mentally? Like, what does it actually mean to you to make your business successful? And if you continue doing what you're doing today, are you going to get there? Probably not, because you don't have the skill set, you don't have the experience, you don't have the knowledge, right? And so you're putting all of that on the back burner by not investing in this. So, there's a lot. I can go on for days about that, but there's a huge burden. There's a huge burden to not doing it the right way and bringing in the right talent.
So keep going with that for a second here, and I'll give you a little bit of direction. That huge burden that's in front of business owners. A lot of times, those conversations that you're having with owners are going to require you to say some tough things that are maybe really uncomfortable, to call out some hard truths, which is something I know Colin and his team are really good at, but also to balance that with some empathy. Can you talk about the relationship between like the hard truths and empathy and how you weave that in?
Yeah. So, I feel as if there's nowhere in an organization where that's more prevalent than in the finance seat, right? Because everything we do is black and white, and it's really, really difficult sometimes, because these are emotional. A lot of these decisions that we make at the finance level is they're emotional decisions sometimes, right? Whether we have to not hire people or we have to fire people, like those are really emotional decisions, but they're very black and white. So there is a balancing act that has to occur where it's, hey, look, you said this is what the vision is, but ultimately these are where our resources are. We have scarce resources, and this is what the reality of the situation is. And so a lot of the conversation is about, managing the expectations of when the vision gets accomplished, right? Or when we can do certain things. And sometimes you work with people who, believe that they could just achieve the world, in record pace and record time. And it's just not reality for everybody, right? Like the reality is you may have a business that can only grow at 15% per year. What does that look like? And what does that actually mean for you, right? You may have a business that can scale to 50, 60% growth. That's great. But what does that mean? What does that all look like? So you just have to, a part of what we do and my job is to get you, to bring you back down to reality, bring you back down to earth, and to have a real conversation, right? And I think the great finance leaders are able to do that, and they're able to say, it can't, if we want to achieve this grand vision, here's what it's going to take to get there over 3, 5, 10-year period, versus just saying this is what we're doing within the annual, or this is what we're doing in the quarterly, right? So I think it's just a balancing act, and it's all about communication and rooting it back in reality ultimately. So
And Colin, I know you're going to have
Yeah.
something to add, layer in on top of that.
Yeah, and I think the thing to me is just the practical nature of how some of this stuff comes up at times for folks. So you think about what Frank was talking about how we can achieve it, because it makes me laugh in terms of some of our high, creative entrepreneurs who want to basically defy the laws of physics and defy the laws of finance as it relates to how this works. And as much as they try with as much passion as possible, there are still some things like gravity and cash flow that come into play, right? Outside of that, what I would say is there's some real practical things that when done well, because, Frank's staying, at a bit of a higher level, but I even think about in terms of the work I've seen him do in terms of talking to somebody about if we're going to grow this way, then we need to collect more upfront. We can't have it pull out as long. We got to have this payment policy, so funds are coming in this way. Because if I get an implementation fee and I get fees along the way, and I've got this monthly recurring revenue, I'm not waiting till this end to do this billing and waiting another 60 days. that feeds this engine of marketing that we need to drive leads. It feeds the engine of payroll that I need to hire salespeople. And so we can do it. So you start talking about it at a higher level, but then what, somebody who's as skilled as Frank is and looking at the whole business model, and saying, what are the things that are true, that are really hard baked in? And what are the things that we may have stories about that are true that we can shift? And if we shift that, oh, we can't sell this. Well, all of a sudden, when you help them understand, well, if we can't sell it that way, we can't achieve this level of growth. If you sell it this way, we can achieve this level of growth. And all of a sudden, well, we can sell it that way, right? So all of a sudden, there's these practical things about pricing, structure, bundling, billing, how we handle all those kinds of things that really become impactful and become the fuel for growth. And that is really when you have a partner in the finance seat is what you have. You have somebody who can have the fuel for growth and, quite frankly, the fuel for protection. Listen, we've been through some interesting times recently. And so people that made harder decisions when they were making a bunch of money and putting some cash aside, all of a sudden in the last 18, 24 months have been really happy to have it because it's allowed them to do things their competitors can't. But again, that is a partner in the finance seat helping you see those things and make those decisions at that point in time, right?
I've got a nugget of value that I think is very relevant to this conversation, which is when it comes time to make the decision that I want to invest in finance or I need somebody that can help me out in this area, I cannot stress enough the importance of investing in somebody who has the niche or has the industry level experience that you're going to need to get to the next level, right? Like for me, it wasn't easy. I'll just say it was really, simple for me to build plans for Design Pickle because of my experience at Red Cheetah, right? Like it's a service-based business. And I've had that, experience before in the past of growing my own service company from 0 to 7 figures plus, right? And so even now when I'm talking to potential prospects, I'm specifically focused on a niche, right? Tech-enabled services, because I know that space, right? I know it very well. And the only reason why I'm bringing this up is because you hear a lot of advice in the market today where it's like, well, finance is finance and numbers are numbers. And like, I kind of agree with that, to a certain extent. But when you're working with founders and entrepreneurs and trying to make their vision turn into reality, you need somebody that's been there, done that in your industry, right? That can help you see the different obstacles that are going to come down the path and help you overcome them. Like, yes, you can hire a 20-year vet who's been a finance guy at some manufacturing place or some, XYZ conglomerate corporation has got all the skill sets, sure. But are they going to be empathetic? Because we're talking about empathy here, right? Are they going to be empathetic to your path as an entrepreneur, specifically in your space? Probably not. They're probably going to be a little bit more of a hard ass, and they're just going to be like, well, numbers are numbers and black and white is black and white, and this is what it has to be. And do you want that? I'm not sure that really helps you as a founder ultimately at the end of the day. It may help them. It may help them help the business perform, maybe, right? But like, what are the downstream effects of these decisions, right? Is it going to have a huge burden on your culture? Is it going to ultimately hurt the longevity of the business? I don't know. There's just a lot of things to think about and consider when it comes to bringing that person in. You really have to know and trust that person is going to have your best interest in mind is basically what I'm getting at here. And that only happens through knowing that they've been through a certain set of experiences that is valuable to you as a founder.
Absolutely. And you just brought up Design Pickle and some of the experiences you had there. I mean, you were there as they were growing in a really good way. They were going through the capital raise. Without getting down into the minutia or sharing too much, like, what are a couple of the lessons that you learned while you were there?
Wow. I mean, yeah, I think you got to really embrace the pressure and turn it into a positive moment for growth personally and professionally. I think, the thing about Design Pickle, especially when I was there, was that we were building the plane as we were flying it. And it was a pretty big damn plane. It was not like a small thing. It was, the decisions we were making were big decisions, right? And at that point in my career, I had yet to make those decisions. And so a lot of what I had to do was grow up fast, right? And really take on, this, mentality of an obsession for learning, right? There was a lot of stuff that I had to learn as an executive, to push myself to help the company keep pace and keep up, Um, and ultimately what ended up happening was I spent a lot of time outside of, just doing my day-to-day job, developing myself professionally and, trying to get some mentorship and coaching and applying what I was learning outside of my, outside of work into the job so I could obviously meet the needs of the business. Um, and yeah, did I have all the skills and understand FP&A and understand fine? Yeah, I knew how to do all that. That's just table stakes. But it was the other stuff that mattered more. It was the how do I manage my time better? How do I build a team that understands the goals and the visions and how do they see themselves in that picture so they can perform so I can do my job better, right? All of that stuff came through my just tedious efforts of trying to, develop myself professionally. And ultimately, I wouldn't have gotten there if I didn't embrace the pressure because it was a lot of pressure. Like Russ's expectations were that we're going to grow. We're gonna obviously raise some capital and we're gonna grow this bad boy to be $100 million plus valued company, and that's exactly what we did. That's the vision he cast, and that's exactly what ended up happening, right? And the people that saw it through the entire way were the people that were like, you know what, no matter what, I'm going to continue to learn. I'm going to continue to apply myself. I'm going to continue to lean into this process. And, we grew through that process. I grew professionally. I know Colin probably watched that professional development and that growth happen. And we ultimately, we kicked ass, man. I think in that, 4-year time period, we went from 6 million when I first got there to 26 million. So, I mean, that's incredible growth. We raised $25 million. I think I ended up raising somewhere around 35 million total capital by the time I left. And that was kind of like for my peers, like, and people I went to school with, that was like unheard of. They were like, what do you mean you've raised almost $30 million? What does that even look like? Like, how do you do that? And so there was just all these different things that ended up happening because of that, me leaning into it and embracing the pressure. So that was the biggest lesson. And yeah, I'm still embracing the pressure today because even as an entrepreneur, there's different pressures. Pressure doesn't really go away, right? It just changes. So yeah.
That was going to be my next question. You talked about having an obsession for learning, which is, I think, what makes good leaders, good entrepreneurs for sure. They don't ever think they've got it all figured out. And I'm sure having launched Fiscal now, I think you said a year and a half into this or thereabouts. What are some of the biggest things you've learned a year and a half into launching Fiscal that that are really highlights for you?
Well, I had to really adopt the mindset of a CEO. I went obviously from a finance seat to being a business owner, and there comes a lot with being a CEO that's just completely different from being a CFO, right? And so I had to learn sales. I had to learn marketing. I learned customer operations, all of those things that at Design Pickle, they were already, subject matter experts in those seats. I had to basically be those seats for Fiscal, right? And so, really it was again that theme of just embracing that pressure and leaning into it and saying, okay, I've never sold before. I need sales training. Where can I go out and figure out how to sell? Where can I go out and figure out how to prospect, right? And so, I've got dozens. There are books all just around my office, right? Books on top of books, workshops on top of workshops, traveling across the country to go see these workshops and investing the time and money. It was very expensive, right? To get this learning from people who know what they're doing, have done it before, and then apply those processes to my business. And that's been the biggest, like, those have been the biggest things recently that have helped me grow, which is really investing in people who have been there, done that, and then kind of using that investment that I put into that to apply it and see that immediate growth happen. The biggest area is like outbound sales, right? I've never had to be somebody that's had to get on a phone, do a cold call, type up cold emails, produce my own content on LinkedIn. I did not know any of this, right? I was the type of person who was like, here's what the data says we should do, and this is the most efficient. I'm really good with the numbers, and obviously that's what I do, right? But the execution of it was not there for me, right? And so I had to learn what that looked like, how to build systems around it, and that's been the biggest turning point for me as a business owner. Honestly, it's the coaching side of it.
So Cullen, I'm going to let you chime in on this. How does what Frank just shared about being an owner, founder, entrepreneur, how does that line up with what you see in other owners and entrepreneurs, some who are just getting started, maybe some who are a little further along?
Yeah, I think the key thing you hear is talking about Frank just recognizing what he's great at and recognizing where he needs help or where he needs support. And sometimes it means we're going to go learn the thing. Sometimes it means we're going to go hire the thing, right? And so when you think about that, there's different ways you can go at that in terms of that. So sometimes people are like, oh, I gotta fix some of my weaknesses. I think it's important to recognize those, to try to backfill those so that you have even some perspective to be able to interact with somebody, even if you hire them, but really thinking through what is the strategy for that moving forward. So to me, it's a critical component for many of our owners as they start to scale to say, okay, where are places where I've got some blind spots that I want to fill in? And then is that something I'm going to take on long term, or is that something that I'm going to do for the time being because of where we are in the stage of the business versus what I'm going to do forever? Because I suspect Frank may not sell for forever, and he's already got some ways in which he's partnered with folks like us and other places to kind of continue to extend that. He can certainly do it, but he's thinking through his own strategy in the midst of that. But the key thing to me is having that opportunity and being able to see that as a place for them to grow, but also a plan for hire, which you got to have financial resources to do.
100%.
So Frank, if I'm somebody who's listening to this, I'm an owner, I'm an operator, and I'm hearing what you're talking about from the financial side, and I'm like, I could probably use a little bit of help. Talk a little bit about fiscal, how people can find you. What's that connection point?
Yeah. So again, Fiscal is a fractional CFO firm that specializes in helping 7-figure service-based businesses scale to 8 figures and beyond. And we have a core focus on building plans that help founders and business owners achieve the exit that they're looking for, right? And so part of our process is to identify owners and entrepreneurs who have that exit mentality, right? Like they're thinking through their exit strategy already, right? And there's a lot of ways that we do that. We obviously, I'm doing a lot of cold outreach and just my own prospecting in qualification to do that. But ultimately, we're doing a lot of organic content that's talking about how to exit, how to set up your business to be investable ultimately. And really that's like our biggest value to people is helping them understand what that actually looks like. Because I think a lot of people say, hey, I got this business, I want to sell it. But people don't really understand that investors buy assets, right? They don't buy businesses just to buy businesses. They buy things that could give them a certain amount of cash flow long term, that could provide some level of return to their LPs or whoever's funding them, right? And so I think a lot of business owners have just there's a disconnect, right? And a part of our goal is to bridge that gap to say, this is where you are today, this is where you want to go, this is how we're going to get there, right, in the meantime. And so a lot of what we do is coming in and looking at these services and saying, hey, you're super contract based right now, and yeah, your revenue is high, but you got 20 damn customers, right? Like, how about we productize your service and give it this, this streamlined go-to-market, motion here that allows you to grow recurring revenue at a predictable and reliable clip month over month, year over year. And now what you have is a very large, diverse set of customers that has a certain enterprise value attached to it versus you as a founder, selling through your relationships, and that's how you're growing your revenue. Nobody buys that. Investors buy companies that have a product that they sell or an offer that they sell that ultimately people are snatching off of the shelves to get, that has some level of product market fit, right? And so part of our job is to really make that plain for people and help them realize what it's going to take to get there. And, you can find us at getfiscal.io. I obviously do a lot of my own content too as well. And I reach out to service-based businesses. And one of the things I really want to start doing is more of this, more speaking, more podcasts for people who are, consuming this content, looking to figure out how to grow and scale their companies.
So, Colin, you talked a little bit about the partnership you have in place with Frank and kind of how you're able to direct customers his direction. Talk a little bit about Exit Momentum and how people can find Exit Momentum and what that looks like.
Yeah, so for more information from us and have a chance to connect with one of our coaches or myself, just go to exitmomentum.com and click on the schedule a call button now, or you can actually download this quite a bit of material that we have, things like this that you can check out that you may find valuable. And so for us, hopefully what you notice today is that we're connected to experts in their field. We're not trying to be everything to everybody. We're clear what we are amazing and truly elite at, and we're not trying to be everything to everybody. And so that's why we partner with folks like Frank and why we do this kind of content, because we know that makes us stronger and it delivers a better result for our client, which is ultimately what we're charged with doing.
Awesome. Thank you both for this time today, this conversation. Frank, thanks for joining us today. You planted a lot of seeds for me, a lot of things to think about as a small business owner. Colin does the same thing for me all the time. So I appreciate both of you guys for taking the time to do this today.
Great.
No worries. Thank you.